Joining us online is Bishop Robert Barron, the Bishop of the Diocese of Winona-Rochester in Minnesota. And of course, he is often cited as the Bishop of the Internet. You can check him out at wordonfire.org. It reaches millions of people every year. Bishop, thanks so much for joining the show.
Hey, Ben, always good to be with you.
So let's talk about Christmas. Christmas obviously is coming up. We're very close upon it. And I wonder what you thought. Because Christmas has become sort of a secular holiday in the United States for some odd reason, it's sort of become a cultural phenomenon rather than a religious phenomenon. You know, what would you like to see Christmas become to Americans?
Well, yeah, I'd like to recover the real religious heart of Christmas. It was more of that when I was a kid. That's been a change in my lifetime, where it's become much more, as you say, kind of secularized, commercialized. You know, it's about the Word made flesh. It's about the baby Jesus. It's about the incarnation. And I think that whole idea suffused American culture for a long time. I'd love to see that revive. And here's a really practical thing. It's maybe more for the Catholics, but maybe the Protestants too, is everyone now goes to Mass, if they come, on Christmas Eve. And Christmas Day is kind of, the churches are sometimes relatively empty on Christmas Day. And I hate that. I think the day itself should be the focus of attention. And if people come to church, they should come on the day and not just on the day before, which is permitted in the Catholic Church. But I think there's been a loss of the importance of that day, that something happened when the Word became flesh, and we should celebrate that.
So obviously in Catholicism, there's a whole period that leads up to Christmas that is religiously important. Now, what does Advent, for people who are not aware of Advent and what that means, what exactly is it?
Adventus in Latin just means coming or arrival, right? So one way to look at it, Ben, is three dimensions. So the church looks back in time at the adventus of Christ in time. The fact that we measure time according to him, there's before him and after him, that he's for us the decisive climax of history. It wasn't the 18th century with the political and scientific revolutions. It wasn't the axial age. For us, it's the arrival of Jesus. So we look back with great reverence at that time. We also look around at the present because we say the Lord wants to come now to inhabit our hearts. When Paul says it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me, he's talking about the adventus now. And then we would hold, of course, to a future coming, the second coming of Jesus, the culmination of all of history. So we would hold that history is going somewhere. It's not one darn thing after another. It's not just cyclical. It's not meaningless. But history is gathered at one great eschatological point, and we would identify that as the second coming of Jesus. So I would say Advent is the time when we look back, around, and forward to the coming, the adventus of Jesus.
The radical left does not understand the profound, unshakable bond between the Christian and Jewish communities in the United States. While the secular left pushes their anti-religious agenda, Christians and Jews have stood together, defending our shared values and religious liberties. That's why I'm proud to partner with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. For over 40 years, they've been doing something remarkable, building bridges between our communities through faith, shared values, and mutual respect. And the fellowship doesn't just talk, they act. Right now, they're on the ground providing real help to vulnerable Jewish families and elderly around the globe. We're talking about food, medical care, emergency assistance, and security to people who need it most. I can tell you, this organization represents exactly what makes our alliance so powerful. It's about Christians and Jews coming together to do what our faiths command, helping those in need. If you want to be part of this amazing mission, visit benforthefellowship.org. That is benforthefellowship.org. Your support makes a real difference in people's lives. Tons of people still suffering over in the Holy Land, people who are living in hotels still because they haven't been able to go back home. People whose family members have been wounded during this war, people whose family members have been killed. Head on over to benforthefellowship.org to help support them, benforthefellowship.org. God bless and thank you. So obviously this year, Hanukkah falls at the same time as Christmas. Now, one of the things, again, that's sort of funny about the way that these holidays have been celebrated in the United States is because Christmas is such an enormous season for Christians, Hanukkah has been, I think, increased in attention, particularly to more secularized Jews, in a way that many of the sort of bigger holidays in the Jewish calendar are not. It's sort of interesting the way that works. I mean, just as an Orthodox Jew, the big holidays are typically Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shavuot, Pesach. Right? Those are the biblical holidays that predate Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is not what's called a Yom Tov. So you don't actually take off work. You don't actually, you're not barred from using electricity, for example. It's not a major holiday, but because Christmas is such a cultural phenomenon in the United States, Hanukkah has now been increased in sort of cultural importance. With that said, Hanukkah really is a thematically important holiday for a lot of reasons. And of course, in the Christian worldview, Hanukkah is the lead off to a period that ends in some ways in the birth of Christ.
Yeah, and what I love about Hanukkah, I mean, the rededication of the temple, after the desecration of the temple, it's the rededication of it, is a very important theme for Christians, because the temple, I mean, as you well know, runs as a great theme throughout the entire Bible. The Garden of Eden is a kind of temple. Noah's Ark is a kind of floating temple. The Temple of Jerusalem of, maximal importance for Israel. And then for Christians, Jesus is the new temple. I will tear down this place and in 3 days rebuild it, referring to the temple of his body. You have a greater than the temple here. When Jesus says that, that's a breathtaking claim for a first century Jew to make. If the temple was the great dwelling place of the Lord, for Christ to say, you have got a greater than the temple here. And so we take very seriously the idea of God coming to dwell now in us. So Paul will say, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. So that's Christ dwelling within us. But it came to my mind very much. I was doing some commentary for the rededication of Notre Dame in Paris, and this gorgeous Gothic cathedral. And I think you and I talked about this a while ago. Notre Dame, who's Notre Dame? Our Lady. It's this Israelite girl, first century, from Nazareth in Galilee. We believe an angel spoke to her and she becomes the mother of God. That at the center of one of the most important cities in the West, one of the most vital centers of Western civilization, is a monument to this Israelite girl. She becomes the Ark of the Covenant. That's how the church fathers read Mary, is she bears within her the presence of the Lord. So all these wonderful temple themes and the rededication, the reconsecration of the temple. And then finally, it's to bring our people back to the worship of God. Too many have been running away from the temple. They've been running away from our churches. I want them to come back. I mean, so all of that comes to my mind when I think of Hanukkah.
So obviously, going into Christmas, we've spoken a number of times over the course of this year. It's been a very fraught year. The entire recent history of the West seems to have been pretty fraught. But it's a time of light for a lot of different religions, but particularly, obviously, most importantly, for Christians. So what is your big Christmas message this year?
The Christmas message is the same one the church has always said. It never really varies. It's that the Word has become flesh, and that means God's offer of salvation is there. That into the darkness has come the light. So go back to the prologue of John's Gospel, is the light shines in the darkness and the darkness will not overcome it. The Christian Gospels are massively honest about the darkness of the world. They know the fallenness of the world. But the message is the light has come into the darkness and the darkness will not win. And there's the message for Christians of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, is all the forces of darkness overwhelmed him, it seemed, but the light conquers the darkness. That's the message. That's the ground for hope. It's the same Christmas message every year.
Well, Bishop Robert Barron, go check out all of his work over at wordonfire.org. And if you're a Christian, take his advice and go to church not just on Christmas Eve, but also on Christmas Day. Bishop, it's been great to speak to you over the course of the year. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year as well.
God bless you, Ben. Thanks.
Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.